the great danger that was befalling the earth, especially over the last 1,000 years prior to the appearance of Lord Caitanya. There were so many horrible things, horrific events. People were being killed and tortured, innocent people. It all began with Attila the Hun. The Huns were coming, raiding the cities of Europe, plundering. And after that, the Vikings came. Even though they were in the north, they came down to England, harassing the citizens that lived on the coastline, killing innocent people, killing the friars in the churches. The Vikings, some of them were called berserkers. You know what berserk means? Berserk means that when you go crazy. And so the Vikings, they were also known as berserkers. That's what they referred to themselves as. Because in battle, they just became so blinded by anything else. They were just fighting fiercely, killing everyone and anyone in their way, men, women, or children. And then there was also Genghis Khan. And Genghis Khan came from Mongolia. One of the interesting things about the Mongolians is that the boys, at a very early age, they learned to ride on horseback. They were expert on horseback, but they also were expert in the use of the bow and arrow, especially on a galloping horse. And so they used these skills, and they went west toward Europe, and they were plundering and pillaging the various cities. And one city that they came to, that they met a lot of resistance. You know, the more resistance they met, the crueler they were. So in one city that was besieged, finally they captured it, and they marched the citizens out into the fields, and they slaughtered 10,000, cutting off their heads. And there were huge piles of heads. And beside this type of slaughter, there's also horrific diseases, just like the Black Death, the plague that befell Europe. Practically 3/4 of the population was wiped out in Europe. And so Advaitacharya, he was looking across the earth. He understood all of these things, what were happening, even happening in his own realm, in India. The Muslim invaders, for the first time, they crossed over the Sindhu River Valley about the 10th century. And by the 13th century, they had conquered northern India, including Bengal, was all under Muslim rule. And they were destroying the temples and the idols of the sacrilegious. The Muslims, they didn't think very much of idol worship. And so the devotees, they had to hide the deities. And so in this way, Advaitacharya, he knew that something had to be done. And so he sat down at the bank of the Ganges River, and he called out very loudly, "Oh my dear Lord, oh Krishna, please let me petition you in a humble state of mind. Let me worship you with tulsi leaves and Ganges water. Let me worship you in a purified heart. Oh, protector of religion, you dwell in the vision and hearing of your devotees. You also live in their lotus-like hearts. Please show them your special favor and manifest yourself in this age of Kali to guide us on the path of loving devotion." So this was Advaita's appeal, his petition to the Lord. And he knew that whoever offered the Lord tulsi leaves and Ganges water, the Lord felt so indebted because he couldn't think of anything that he could repay or give in exchange for the Ganges water and the tulsi leaves, because they were so valuable. Let us try this for a moment. Just imagine yourselves at the bank of the Ganges. And imagine yourselves praying like Advaitacharya prayed. And so I'll say the prayer, and then you can all repeat the prayer. But repeat it very loudly. Advaitacharya called out to the Lord very loudly. And so I'll say it, and you can repeat. Oh my dear Lord, oh Krishna.
Oh my dear Lord, oh Krishna.
Okay, just a little slower. Oh my dear Lord, oh Krishna.
Oh my dear Lord, oh Krishna.
Let me petition you.
Let me petition you.
With a humble mind.
With a humble mind.
Let me worship you.
Let me worship you.
With Tulsi leaf and Ganges water.
With Tulsi leaf and Ganges water.
With a pure heart.
With a pure heart.
O protector of religion.
O protector of religion.
You dwell in the vision and hearing of your devotees.
You dwell in the vision and hearing of your devotees.
You also live in their lotus-like hearts.
You also live in their lotus-like hearts.
Please show us your special favor.
Please show us your special favor.
And manifest yourself.
And manifest yourself.
In this age of Kali.
In this age of Kali.
To guide us on the path of loving devotion.
To guide us on the path of loving devotion.
And let's not forget the most important part of this. Then he chanted the holy name very loudly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so by and by, Nimai Pandit appeared. Nimai, he was called Nimai because he took birth under a neem tree. And later on he was called a Pandit because he was a great scholar. He was actually a child prodigy. And after a time, in his early teens, when he was 13 or 14, by that time, he already had a following. He already had so many students coming to learn from him. And he was a teacher of grammar. But he was also a great rascal. He was very arrogant and very proud. He didn't want to have anything to do with the Vaishnavas and with devotional service. But after a time, Nimai Pandit's father passed away, Jagannath Mishra. And it's the custom to go to Gaya, to offer oblations to the forefathers, to think of them, and to bestow some gifts to the forefathers, to remember them. And so Caitanya, or Nimai Pandit, he set out to Gaya with some of his students, but something strange happened. On the journey, he was overcome with a fever, and he was shivering, and his students were piling blankets on him to try to keep him warm, to try to prevent his fever from getting any worse. But it was getting very, very bad. And he finally gave them the remedy. He said, go, get some water that was used to bathe the feet of the Brahmins, and bring that water to me and I'll drink it. And so they ran out and got a bowl and brought back the bowl with water that had been used to wash the feet of the Brahmins. And so immediately, Nimai Pandit drank that water, and miraculously, he was cured of his fever. And so they journeyed on, and they finally reached Gaya. And there in Gaya, Nimai Pandit met Ishvara Puri, that exalted Vaishnava. Actually, they had met earlier. Ishvara Puri had come to Mayapur, had even come to the house of Nimai Pandit. Ishvara Puri was the disciple of Madhavinda Puri, and even Madhavinda Puri also came to Mayapur and went to the house. I think this is before the birth of Nimai Pandit. when he stayed with Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Mata. But now Ishvara Puri had gone there to Mayapur. And he was in the process of writing a book on Krishna. And so he heard that Nimai Pandit, he was a great scholar of grammar. And he came to Nimai Pandit and he said, "My dear boy, please take a look at my manuscript. I want to find out if there are any mistakes. Take a look and let me know." And Nimai Pandit was horrified. He said, I'm not going to look at this manuscript. I don't want to find any mistakes in the Vaishnavas. Only a great sinner would look for the mistakes of a Vaishnava who is glorifying Krishna. No, I'm not going to look. But the funny thing is, a few days later, Ishvara Puri came back. This time he came with a poem. And he read the entire poem to Nimai Pandit. And Nimai Pandit, he was listening very carefully. He said, you know, in that verse, in one particular verse, there's a verb that you use, but that verb is used incorrectly. And so Ishvara Puri perked up. And he said, well, I better do something about this. And so he went back and he was looking at that verse, looking at the incorrect verb, and he was trying to find out. But after a while he thought, well, wait a minute. This verse is perfect as it is. I'm using the verb correctly. It says exactly what I mean. And then he went back to Nimai Pandit and told him, well, this verse actually is correct. It means exactly what it means. And so Nimai Pandit smiled. He was very happy. Actually, Caitanya is very happy when he can be corrected by the devotees. He's very happy to serve the devotees. He is very happy to be corrected by the devotees. Also, when a devotee corrects us, we should have great joy in our hearts. Let me be corrected by this devotee. It's my great, great pleasure. And that was what Nimai Pandit was feeling. And so getting back to our story, here Nimai Pandit, now on his journey, and especially in Gaya, now his devotional sentiments were manifesting themselves. And he fell at the feet of Ishvara Puri. And he said, please accept me as your disciple. Lift me up out of this world of birth and death, of misery and suffering. Please accept this body as your own. Do with it whatever you like. And so Ishvara Puri told him, my dear boy, go and chant the holy name, and you will perfect your life. And so Lord Caitanya there in Gaya, he began to chant. But after a few days, he came back to Ishvara Puri with a complaint. He said, I don't know what type of mantra you've given me. When I chant this Hare Krishna mantra, my mind is disturbed. Whenever I chant, my body begins to tremble. I shiver. Sometimes I fall on the ground, rolling around in the dirt. Sometimes tears are squirting out of my eyes, and sometimes I even laugh loudly like a madman, uncontrollably. What type of mantra have you given me? And so, you know, I was thinking about this particular description. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel that there's a secret message here. There's the trembling of the body, there's a rolling around of the dirt, there's a squirting of tears coming out of the eyes. Maybe we can't manifest those things very, very easily, but we can manifest laughing. And there even is now this thing called laughing yoga. And so besides Caitanya being the founder of the Sankirtan movement, maybe he was the founder of this laughing yoga. And you know, Prabhupada, you know what he says? Chant Hare Krishna and be happy, right? So let's try this, a little bit of this laughing yoga. We'll all start, just everybody start laughing. Come on, up a little more, a little higher. Chant the holy name, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Come on, let me hear you. Turn to your neighbors, chant and laugh, Hare Bol. And one more time, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol. You know, we may have something here. We get a whole new audience coming to New Vrindaban with this laughing yoga. And Caitanya, he was instrumental in pointing that out, this laughing, like an uncontrollable, like a madman. And so, after Lord Caitanya described his experience, you know, Ishvara Puri was smiling from ear to ear. And he said, my dear boy, you have perfected your life. You know, this life and all of the mundane achievements and all of the wealth and all of the pleasures and happiness in this world are like a little drop of water compared to a vast ocean of devotional service. The happiness and the deep and profound pleasure that we achieve from devotional service is a vast ocean compared to a little bitty insignificant drop of water. My dear child, you have pleased me very much. Actually, I know who you really are. You are none other than the King of Vaikuntha. And you yourself can easily save millions and millions, countless material souls wandering in this world. Actually, you can save unlimited universes. And so, my dear boy, go back to Navadvip and begin this Sankirtan movement. And so, Lord Caitanya went back to Navadvip. Now he was a God-intoxicated person. For a while, he continued this teaching of his, this grammar. As Varshana Maharaj pointed out earlier in the morning in his class, that this grammar was now being taught in a whole different way, not in an academic or a scholarly way, but every syllable, every vowel. Lord Caitanya, he taught that every vowel and every syllable is Krishna, is connected to Krishna. Every verb, every adjective actually describes Krishna's glories. And so, when he was speaking like this, Nimai Pandit would go on for days and days and days. And it's described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat that the students were in tears. But what type of tears? We don't know. Because Varshana Maharaj explained this morning that many of the students, they were disappointed because they came there to become scholars, to become experts in grammar. And Caitanya was no longer teaching this thing. And so they were crying because they were wondering, am I wasting my time? And others were crying because Nimai Pandit had touched their hearts. And so at that time, there was the chanting, not in the Sankirtan, in the public arena, but the chanting was going on in the homes of the devotees. It was invitation only, no outsiders. The chanting was very intimate. At one time, at the house of Srivasta Kaur, the chanting was going on. And then afterwards, Srivas was very quiet. Something horrible had happened. His son was very sick and he died during the chanting. But he didn't want to disturb the kirtan, so he didn't say a word. But as soon as Caitanya found out about it, he jumped up and he said, "Why was this not told to me earlier?" And he went to the room, and all of the devotees followed him, where the boy's body lay, and he touched the body, and the boy got up, and he said, "My dear child, why are you leaving the house of your mother and father?" And the boy said, he said, "My dear Lord, I am only a servant, sold out to you, and now I've stayed here for so long as you wanted me to, and now it's my time to go. You keep me here, and at any particular moment when you want me, then I'll leave, all according to your desire." And then the boy lay down, and once again he passed away. And Caitanya said to Srivasta Kaur that you may have lost one son, but Lord Nityananda and I, we are your sons eternally, and we will never ever leave you. And so now Caitanya, in a God-intoxicated state, began his movement. And not everybody was happy. Many people were going to the local governor, Chankazi. Some of them were even Hindus. The Hindus were saying that this upstart, he's creating his own religious cult. We don't know what's going on. The name of God is supposed to be sacred. It's not supposed to be given to anybody and everybody. No, it's a sacred, precious thing, only for the Brahmins in the temple. And now the chanting is going on so loudly all night long, the clashing of cymbals, the pounding of drums, we can't even get any sleep. Even God in the temple can't sleep at night. And they appealed to Chankazi that he has to do something about it. He said, "Go home, I'll take care of it." He also heard some complaints from the Muslims, and they had been mocking the chanting, and some of them, they couldn't get the chanting off of their tongue. Once they vibrated the holy name of Krishna, then their tongues were automatically vibrating Hare Krishna. And they complained, and they said, "We don't know what to do. Our tongues are saying Hare Krishna uncontrollably. This nonsense, this Nimai Pandit, he has some mystical abilities over people's minds. Something must be done." And so that evening when Chankazi was going home, he heard the chanting in a house, and he rushed in and started to yell and scream. But the devotees, they were so absorbed in the chanting of the holy name, nobody paid any attention to Chankazi. And so he ripped a madanga out of somebody's hand, one of the devotees' hands, and he smashed it on the ground to get everybody's attention. And he said, "By whose authority are you chanting so loudly? This city of Navadvip happens to be under my authority, and I don't remember giving anybody the permission to chant the holy name. Today, I'll be lenient. I'm not going to take any offense. But the next time I see someone chanting this name, I will take away all of their property, and I'll force them to become Hindus." And so this was a very severe taking away all of the property, forcing them. At those times, there's two different types of ways that one could be forced to become a Hindu.
Muslim.
A Muslim, excuse me, I'm sorry. There are probably other ways that people were forced to become Hindus as well. But Prabhupada actually says that Hinduism, there was such a fossilized caste system that this caste system drove many people away. And so At that time, the Muslims, they were converting Hindus to their religion. Sometimes they would just sprinkle water that the Muslims used to wash their hands, and then they would sprinkle it on the Hindu and they would change. Sometimes they took more drastic measure and stuffed meat into the mouths of the Hindus and forced them to eat meat. And so anyways, now Chankazi went to his home. And the devotees were in great anxiety. What are we going to do? The Chankazi forbade us to chant the holy name of Krishna. And Caitanya came up with a strategy. And this is the first time we hear about the civil disobedience movement of Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi in the 20th century. But hundreds of years before they had this civil disobedience movement, that Caitanya actually started this civil disobedience movement with the chanting of the holy name. There were 3 kirtan parties. One, the main personality was Haridas Thakur, chanting in the middle of the kirtan. And the other one, the second kirtan, Advaita Charya was chanting in the middle. And in the third kirtan party, Lord Caitanya and Nityananda, they were chanting and dancing in the middle. And so they went around, they began in the evening, and they were going around from one neighborhood to another, and more people joined them. And pretty soon there were thousands and thousands of people chanting the holy name of God. And finally they came to the house of the Qazi. The Qazi was so afraid that he was trembling inside the house, he wouldn't even come out. But Lord Caitanya invited him out. Don't worry, there will be no harm upon you. And so finally, Chankazi came out. And they had a conversation, Lord Caitanya and Chankazi. Lord Caitanya asked, he had come specifically to ask a question. He asked Chankazi, tell me, you drink cow's milk, don't you? Yes, yes. And therefore the cow is your mother. And you use the bull in the fields to grow the grains and the foods, don't you? Yes. Therefore, the bull is your father. So tell me, why are you eating your mother and father? Lord Caitanya was very happy. But Chankazi had a rebuttal. He said, you know, in the Vedas, it's explained that there are certain sacrifices where you can kill a cow. The Brahmins themselves, they kill the cows. But Lord Caitanya, he said that actually those sacrifices were done by qualified Brahmins through mantra. And by the mantra, they would kill the cow, and then the cow would be reborn in a new body, giving a youthful appearance to the cow. And so in this age of Kali, none of this type of sacrifice is allowed. But only in the previous ages, when there were qualified Brahmins to chant the mantras. And so this way they talked back and forth. And finally, Lord Caitanya asked, because on their demonstration, all night long, they were chanting from one neighborhood to another. No one came to stop them. And so Lord Caitanya asked the Qazi, you are the governor, you are the supreme ruler of this county. Tell me, why didn't you come to forbid the chanting? We were chanting all night long. No one came to stop us. And Chankazi had a secret. He said, can I talk to you privately? He said, Caitanya said, well, these are all my confidential associates. Whatever you want to say to me, you can say also to them. And so Chankazi explained why he didn't come out to counteract the chanting of the holy name. He said the other night he had a dream. He had a dream that out of the shadows stepped this very strange creature. And the creature jumped on his chest. The creature was very strange. It looked like a half man, half lion. And he roared very loudly. And then he spoke. He said, "You broke the drum, didn't you? You threatened my devotees. You forbid the chanting of my holy name. I don't take that very lightly. I should rip you from limb to limb. But you know what? You weren't so bad with the devotees. You were very lenient. And I'm going to be lenient with you today also. I'm not going to harm you. But the next time you threaten the devotees, I'm not only going to come back and kill you and your family. This is pretty heavy. Here, Lord Nrsingadev, I'm not only going to kill you and your family, but I'm going to kill all the meat eaters. And so Kazi was trembling. And then, upon roaring once again, Lord Nrsingadev disappeared. And so he told the story. And at the end of the story, then Chankazi opens up his shirt. He said, Lord Nrsingadev left these marks before he left. He left these marks on my chest as a reminder. And when the devotees saw how Lord Nrsingadev had manifested himself and the marks on the chest of Chankazi, what did the devotees do? Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! And so at this time, the devotees were greatly ecstatic. And Chankazi fell at the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he said, I know that you are none other than Narayan himself. This I know in the core of my heart. I feel by uttering your name, my heart is purified. And then Lord Caitanya picked him up and they began chanting and dancing. And at the end of the day, Chankazi made one decree. He said, I'll never forbid the chanting of the holy name ever again. And to those who are going to be in my dynasty in the future, I make a decree that no one should ever check the chanting of the holy name. And so in this way, everyone was absorbed in this pastime. It's explained actually in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that anyone who hears this pastime, because this pastime is about a person, Chankazi, who was greatly offensive to the devotees. He threatened the devotees. He broke the drum. He forbid them to chant the name of Krishna. He was a great offender. And it said that this pastime, if one hears this pastime, all of the offenses that we have made against others and against the devotees will be washed clean by anyone who sincerely hears this pastime with great attention. Hari Bol! So we have a chance, a fighting chance for survival. Because in the community here, sometimes we don't remember our great fortune, and sometimes we dismiss the value of devotees, take people for granted, even make offense in one way or another. So this is a great opportunity to wash all of the offenses away. And so at the very end of this story, Lord Caitanya and the devotees, they've been chanting feverishly, and I think there's some ponds that have been prepared for refreshments for Lord Caitanya and the devotees. But Caitanya actually sought out the hut of Cultivator Sridhar, and he knew that by his hut there was an old iron pot that was all bent out of shape, and it was dented. And Sridhar Swami, Kolavecha Sridhar, he would wash or he would drink from this old iron pot. And Lord Caitanya sought out that iron pot after this exhausting time of chanting the holy name, and to refresh himself, he drank from that iron pot. And so there are many, many wonderful pastimes. But I'd like to end my presentation because Lord Caitanya, he implored the devotees. This is what he said at one time. You all know this. As a large fig tree bears fruit all over its body, so the tree of devotional service also bears fruit. And when that fruit ripens, it is as sweet as nectar. Even all the wealth in the world couldn't pay for one ripened fruit of this tree of devotional service. But I'm all alone. How many fruits can I pick? How many fruits can I distribute to the public? It would be a great difficult job for me alone. Therefore, I ask all of you to take up this task and to distribute these fruits. It doesn't matter who is fit or who is unfit. It doesn't matter what time or what place. It doesn't matter if they ask or they don't ask. Just distribute these fruits, handful after handful, all over the world. And in this way, we can save people from the ravages of old age and disease and death. And so this is the appeal. Just like at the beginning of our story, Advaitacharya petitioned the Lord to manifest himself, and he did. And now the Lord is petitioning all of us to help him in this task of distributing Krishna consciousness. And so here at New Vrindavan, we're building this community and preparing it for visitors, trying to follow Prabhupada's mandates of a community as a place of pilgrimage and a community that is self-sufficient. So this has been the mandate for many, many, many years. And this year, we're actually celebrating the 50th anniversary of the founding of New Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. And so, it's just a couple more minutes. And I thank you so much for your kind attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you so very much.